So, number one, I think every other speaker who's in the audience today is sitting there going, thank God I don't have to follow her. Oh my God. So, I thought I'd start with a somewhat controversial and yet not that controversial idea. High school stinks. Right? There we go. Yes! All of you are getting, I get to tell the principal that they said that. Awesome. Great. And why does high school stink, right? And we all know that there's a whole media history about bad high school, TV series, books, movies, about how much we all hate high school. And yet I've chosen to do that with my life. I must have a masochistic streak that is at least a mile wide. And why does high school stink? High school stinks because the technology never works. Oh, wait, there we go. Yay! Okay. High school stinks because we have to do what we're told over and over and over again. I challenge all of you to go to a high school and try and sit next to a student for an entire day. As you go from your 42-minute class to your 42-minute class to your 42-minute class to your 31-minute lunch, where you shove down the industrial food to your next 42-minute class. And at the end of the day, what I ask you is not to even remember the content of your first period class, just remember what subject it was. If you can do that, it's great. And here's the other funny thing, is that what you're told to do over and over and over again, you have no idea why or whether or not you ever need it. To prove my point, just because I like losing my job, I took this slide. That image is from the PSSA preparation book on the state ed website. How many of you have had to do a box and whisker plot in the last year? And worse, what we do so often to kids and what we're doing today, it's actually a little bit different. What we're doing today is worse than what you think it is. What we do today to kids is this. We give them pre-tests, and we find out what they're worst in. And then we give them more of that. Because teaching to joy, teaching to passion, teaching to interest should not matter. It's only making sure you don't suck quite so much at the things you're bad at. And that leads us to the obvious question that kids say to us all the time, that we all said in school, that my wife, who is in the audience sitting next to my mother, I'll make that plug too, that she tells the story of when they had a physics teacher when she was in high school. And the physics teacher quit, probably given a nervous breakdown by my wife and her friends. And they brought in some local engineer trying to teach high school kids physics. And of course, my wife is an English major. I is an English major, two ridiculously overeducated people, like many of the folks in this audience, I am sure. And she tried to get this poor engineer, who is not a teacher, to explain why physics was necessary. And he went through the usual battery of things, and you're gonna need this for college, it's gonna help you on the test, it'll get you a job, all of those things. And finally, after she had said, nope, 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 he turned to the next person and said, well, what are you going to major in, Billy? And he said, engineering. He said, great, you need this. But the question is, of course, why are you in the class if you don't need it? Why does it matter? And I love this slide. I love Flickr. I love Creative Commons. Because I think the really sad thing is that this is not the picture of the stern, wag your finger, sort of stereotype, evil, I'm going to hurt children teacher, of which there are actually very few. Most teachers want to do right by kids. Most teachers went into teaching because they love what they do and they want to share those passions with kids. But the real answer to the question, why are we teaching this, is the thing on the bottom. Because someone told me I had to learn it, or somebody told me I had to teach it. And that's a shame. And it doesn't have to be this way. We can do better. So what can school do? School should teach us how to learn. If nothing else, school should teach us how to learn. Schools should open our minds to ideas, to critical thinking. Why do we learn physics? And the answer that they should have given you all of those years ago is because it is the language of motion, because it is the poetry of the physical world, and that there is a direct connection to the words that Chris spoke. And the beauty of that to the beauty of a ball in flight. And we should introduce kids to those ideas, and we should teach them to think critically. We should teach them to understand that if you can do a calculus derivative, and you can think logically that way, that will inform your poetry. That every idea is a new lens to look on the world, and that classes are not silos of information, but lenses that we can open our eyes to. And we can do that. Schools should also help us learn to live. Schools should matter. High school shouldn't stink. It should be cathedrals. This project, and I want to talk about this for a second, this project is up on our walls right now at SLA. It was just done. I am, as Chris said, the principal of the Science Leadership Academy, this wonderful little partnership school between the School District of Philadelphia and the Franklin Institute. And instead of taking benchmark tests like they do in every other school in Philadelphia, we do benchmark projects every quarter. Every quarter in every class, you got to do something that matters, that's real. Thank you. So what you're looking at here is a Spanish 4 project. And what they had to do was they had to write an essay in Spanish, which already would have failed me, but they had to write an essay about themselves. Who are they? And they had to take 2 different looks at it. The first one was, what is it that people see when they look at me? And the next thing that they had to write about was, what are the things that you can't see? And then, as they learned about Spanish culture, they learned about the power of masks and the significance of masks in many cultures in Central and South America. And then they made papier-mâché masks that were representations, graphically, symbolically, visually, of themselves. And then they took those essays that they wrote, and on the front of the masks, they cut out all of the things that were visual about them. And that's what's on the front. And what you can't see in this picture is that if you turn it over, is all the things you can't see. What an incredible thing. What a wonderful thing. To have to construct yourself, to have to learn another language in which you can do it. I can barely talk about myself in English, and these kids can do it in another language. And then to take that culture of the other language and use that culture, that idea of the mask, and look at the masks we wear. Schools can teach us how to live. Schools can help us become better than who we are today. And at the absolute sort of root of this idea is that a conflict that I see between citizenship and workers. Right now, there are a whole lot of people out there who will tell you that the job of schools is to create the 21st century workforce. Bill Gates loves to talk about this. Why we listen to him about education, I don't know, but that's okay. Apparently, if you make a lot of money, you're qualified to tell teachers what to do. Who knew? Yes, please. Again, I get an amen. Thank you. If we train kids to be workers, that's what we'll get. But if we teach kids to be citizens, if we help them figure that out, we will get the workers we'll need. We can all figure out how to do the cubicle thing. It's not that hard. But if we shoot for citizenry as our goal, if we shoot for the idea that the purpose of school is to help kids realize themselves in a world, in a community, then we will also get the husbands and wives and fathers and scholars and activists and community members and parents and friends that we need. Don't let anybody ever tell you, whether you are a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're in a classroom, that the purpose of school is working. The purpose of school is to learn how to live. And that makes all the difference in the world. And by the way, that matters. This shouldn't just matter if you're a teacher or if you're a parent. This should matter because the people that you want, working next to you in your jobs, living next to you in your homes, voting next to you in the polling places, are people who know how to live. Are people who are confident that they have something to give back. Are people who can be in and of their worlds in powerful ways. And schools have got to help us get there.
The problem is school is designed for this. It's a factory model of education. Think about it. Think about the assembly lines as a factory. Everybody does their thing. Look, I'm the math teacher. I will teach you math. Look, I am the English teacher. I will teach you the English. And then you will go on your little conveyor belt down from class to class to class. And you will be factoryized. You will be institutionalized. You will learn that your job is to know your place. But we can do better. We can do so much better. The question is, how do we get there? I think we got to understand that the most important thing we got to do is ask questions. And we got to ask questions that we don't know the answers to. We've got to understand that we don't have all of the answers. We can't make kids think, let kids think that the answers to everything they need to know are held within the four walls of a classroom. What you're looking at right now on this slide are the essential questions and themes of the Science Leadership Academy across each grade. So in the 9th grade, we're always asking questions about identity. In the 10th grade, we're always asking questions about systems. In the 11th grade, we're always asking questions about change. And what that does is when, for example, in the 9th grade, we ask that question, who am I? How do I relate to my environment? And how does my environment affect me? It creates a moment where classes are no longer silos, but lenses. Every class is a way to investigate those questions in powerful, powerful ways. So in English class, when you're reading Hamlet and you read about a young man who is trying to differentiate his own identity as separate from his parents, as separate from his uncle, as separate from all of the ways that he has to figure out his life for who he is. You are also learning in history class about African American history, and you read about a people's struggle to define themselves throughout the most challenging circumstances we can imagine. And in science class, you're studying biochemistry, and you're learning about how the physical world creates who we are, informs who we are, changes who we are. And now classes make sense. And now we have powerful questions that we can ask that allows us to look at all of those classes, again, not for the simple class that they are, but for ways for us to change the way we view the world. We have to understand, however, that school was built on a model of information scarcity, and now we're in a world of information overload. It used to be you had to go to school to get the information, and the teacher had the information. Now our job is to make sure that kids can make sense of the world, that they can make sense of all of the images and ideas and information that they get poured, that they get bombarded with day after day after day.
Once you find those answers, you got to build things. You got to make stuff that matters. So it's awesome. I was listening to you talk about your book, and literally, again, it's like synchronicity is so cool. Our 11th grade English and history kids just did this project called Building History, where they had to find a building in their communities that had a name, that was named for somebody. And then they had to research it, and who were these people, and why is this building named for them, and what does it mean, and is there any connection? And then they had to show what they know, and we didn't tell them how. The teachers didn't say, okay, you're going to write an essay in 12-point font with blah, 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 and with margins of 1, and they said, make something. Teach me. What a wonderful thing for a child to hear. Teach me. And one of the projects that I literally looked at it last night, this is awesome, is one of our students did this really cool sort of, if anybody's seen Leela Fever's work of the sort of visuals, and she did like an animation kind of thing of a timeline of Mutter's life. And it's up on our website right now, scienceleadership.org/blog, and you can find all of these kids' works. It's unbelievable, cool, amazing artifacts of kids learning. And we couldn't have told her, do it this way. We couldn't have thought of it. Kids are making videos, they're making web pages, they're making dioramas, they're making everything, and they're writing and researching and doing, and they're creating. Our kids have made flow-processed biodiesels, diesel generators. Our kids made a solar thermal water heater that Engineers Without Borders took, and it's being used to sterilize water in a hospital for amputee victims in Sierra Leone. What we need to do is honor the lives kids lead. What if we said high school is not preparation for real life? What if we stopped saying you'll need this someday? What if we said to kids, the lives you lead matter now? What you do matters now. What could they build? What could they create? What could they do? To hammer that point home, the kids who are filming, the kids who are directing, the kids who are taking photographs, the adults, the people, are SLA kids. They're here today, taking part of this with all of you. They are here today, fully in their world, doing stuff that matters. It is unbelievably humbling for me to stand not just before you, but before them, to talk about what we get to do every day together. It is an incredible thing. And once you create real stuff, you gotta share it, right? High school, we all know how we did it. You wrote the paper, you gave it to the teacher, and maybe you liked the teacher, so you cared a lot about it. You know, maybe you didn't, you hated the teacher, so you did it as fast as you could, because who cares what that teacher thinks anyway? But what happens if we shared? There's no way that the work that our kids do should only be between teacher and student. The work that our kids do should be shared with the world. Our kids can be authentic agents in their world. They can do stuff that matters, and then they can actually be in and of their world. This photo is, I can't believe these kids did this. 10th grade project. They work with Leah Stein Dance Company. They take part in Art in the Open. They do all this interpretive dance all over Philadelphia, all over the sort of center city area where our school is located. And they perform as part of a day-long festival of art going on all over their city. The courage to stand in front of people that you don't know and do this, you know. I mean, heck, I know how to talk. I'm good at this, and this scares the heck out of me. These boys stood in front of their world and danced and shared a vision of what they saw around them with the world. When we encourage kids to do that, when we allow kids to see themselves as authentic agents, when we dare them to ask questions, seek out answers, and build things that matter, high school doesn't suck anymore. And when we do that, we can encourage kids to change the world. Thank you.